But first, and let's face facts, Russian President Vladimir Putin humiliated Donald Trump this morning in their 90-minute call to supposedly get a ceasefire in Ukraine. Trump has since tried to claim that this was a great call because he was a strong leader.
We're a country that's now respected.
Respected? The opposite, I'm afraid. Putin had just treated Trump as a joke, a paper tiger, an empty vessel. He'd rejected Trump's ceasefire plan for Ukraine and made impossible demands which he knew Ukraine and Europe could never accept. And he did it not fearing that Trump would hurt him. Putin showed even before they talked what he thought of Trump, joking about keeping the American president waiting for a scheduled call by going overtime at some random meeting, all televised.
По заявлениям Дмитрия Сергеевича Пескова, у вас разговор должен до 18 часов состояться с Дональдом Трампом. Не знаю, насколько он... Работа такая. Ну, не знаю, сейчас надо посмотреть, что на эту фразу скажет Трамп. Может быть, он любит интервью давать, может, уже отреагирует.
Трампа не упоминал, я
Не-не-не, он знает, что у нас дискуссии.
And then came the telephone call itself. Now, I suspect Trump finally starting to dawn on him that he has been outplayed by the Russian despot. But for now, he's trying to hide it. You can tell that by comparing Trump's official readout of the meeting. A readout is a description of what was said. Compare that to Putin's readout. Trump's was very short and reads nothing like Putin's longer one. Trump's readout, for instance, boasts of the alleged progress the two leaders made towards a ceasefire that Trump has already forced on Ukraine, got him to agree to it by bullying its president, even cutting off US military aid and intelligence for a week and a half. And Trump's readout says, the leaders agreed that the movement to peace will begin with an energy and infrastructure ceasefire, don't fire at power facilities, with a broader ceasefire then to be negotiated later, which is Putin's way of saying no, or at least not yet. Now, this bit is the bit that the media is already hailing as a partial ceasefire, which sounds a bit better than two fingers from Putin. It's a Trump win, a Putin concession even, except it's not. It's a Putin win. This gives him a military advantage and keeps the Russian public off his back. Putin actually wants Ukraine to stop using its new homemade missiles and drones to destroy his valuable oil refineries and depots that it's picking off, like the one in Uapsi that Ukraine hit only last weekend. That's the only ceasefire that Putin wants for now. Otherwise, he wants his army left free to keep driving back Ukrainian defenders, get them out of the Russian territory in Kursk that they've held as a bargaining chip, and Putin certainly won't stop fighting until then. And in the meantime, he also wants to be free to keep hitting Ukrainian cities. In fact, a couple of hours after Putin agreed to what's generously called a partial ceasefire, Russia unleashed another 40 drones on civilian targets across Ukraine, one even hitting a hospital in Sumy, that's northeast Ukraine. That's what Putin wants as he stalls and stalls any ceasefire deal. Ukraine held back while Russia unleashes. Now, the only other boast in Trump's readout is that the two leaders also discussed the need to stop proliferation of strategic weapons in the Middle East. And apparently they shared the view, Putin and Trump, that Iran should never be in a position to destroy Israel. Wow, that sounds good, you know, a cooperation to control Iran. But when you read Putin's readout of this very same talk, you will see a very different take. You'll see Trump's humiliation spelled out. Putin makes no mention of stopping Iran. Why would he? It's supplying him with these drones. He makes no mention of stopping Iran or of saving Israel. This just vague talk of trying for some nuclear non-proliferation in the Middle East, which could even mean stopping Israel's nuclear weapons. Who knows? As for Ukraine, Putin told Trump there would be no full ceasefire unless Ukraine essentially surrendered and weakened its army so that it would be a sitting duck if Putin invaded Ukraine a third time to take the rest of the country. Because Putin's readout says what Trump's did not, that the Russian side outlined a number of significant points to include in any ceasefire deal, such as the necessity to stop the forced mobilization in Ukraine and the rearmament of the Ukrainian armed forces. Plus, he wanted the complete cessation of foreign military aid and the provision of intelligence information to Kiev, to Ukraine. Now, Trump actually denies that they discussed that last bit, yet Putin has it in his readout. And it's obvious from all that Putin is not serious about a ceasefire at all. He only wants a ceasefire if it stops Ukraine from rearming, but doesn't stop Russia. If it stops Ukraine from getting foreign military aid, but doesn't stop Russia from getting weapons and soldiers from North Korea and Iran. And there's obviously no way Ukraine could ever agree to that. Putin even insisted that Trump agreed to his war aims, his initial war aims to remove what he calls the root causes of this crisis, which is said in the past means, among other things, removing Ukraine's elected government. And in exchange for all this, a total surrender of Ukraine, essentially, Putin made Trump a sort of beads and blankets kind of offer that Trump, to his shame, apparently jumped at. Says Putin's readout, Donald Trump supported Vladimir Putin's idea to organise hockey matches in the US and Russia between Russian and American players playing in the National Hockey League and the Continental Hockey League, which includes Russia and China. I mean, that is just seriously unbelievable. According to Putin, Trump will get hockey games and Putin gets Ukraine. Fair enough? I mean, I find it impossible to believe that Trump does not now know that he is being treated by Putin as a cheap grifter or a Russian patsy. Now, if Trump is really the badass tough guy that his fans adore and look to, there's only one way he could respond to Putin's insults. It's to assert America's strength and America's values by helping Europe to rearm democratic Ukraine to the teeth, to make sure Putin realizes that his army and his country will bleed out if he doesn't back off. But does Trump then dare admit that he was wrong all along to say that he'd end this war in a day? He was wrong to treat Putin almost as a friend that he could deal with. He was wrong to trash Ukraine as a corrupt and ungrateful sponge of US aid. I've said all this in the past and got blasted for it by a lot of Trump fans, but now you're seeing it in real time. Trump might actually, though, think, it'd probably be less embarrassing and quicker and easier to agree to Putin's demands and give up Ukraine. Quick way of getting this promised peace. But here's the catch. It would never work. Ukraine could not accept this surrender and would fight on even without Trump. Europe will hopefully help a bit, but Ukraine will fight even with fewer weapons and less hope. On the other hand, America's enemies, looking at all this today, they're going to have plenty of hope, China especially. Hope that America is now too weak to stop them. And just yesterday, we saw a sign of this. China sent 59 military aircraft, 59, 9 naval ships, and 2 spy balloons to test Taiwan's air and sea defences ahead of the invasion of Taiwan that China again threatened this week, come the day the US looks too weak to defend its friends. And that day will surely dawn when Trump, or if Trump, does abandon Ukraine, mistaking, as he did today, the contempt of Russia and China for respect.